What would you do if two little boys ruined a store's boat oar and you turned their mischief into a family treasure? Sounds crazy, right? But this small act sparked a storm at home, and now the whole family is divided. Stay with me. This story isn't as simple as it seems. What would you do if two mischievous little boys in your family caused trouble at a store, and their small act of mischief led to a big family drama? This story starts, believe it or not, in the middle of a Walmart on a quiet afternoon. My wife's sister is currently away. I won't get into the details, but let's just say she's not home right now. So her husband, my brother-in-law, is taking care of all 9 of their children. Yes, 9 kids. Some are stepchildren, some are biological, but together they make one big chaotic family under one roof. As you can imagine, with that many kids running around, it's hard to keep track of them all, especially the younger ones. On that day, 2 of the boys, aged 5 and 7, somehow slipped away while the family was shopping at Walmart. You might be wondering, where were the parents? Well, remember, the only adult there was my brother-in-law, and he brought the older kids along to help watch the younger ones. But, as anyone who has ever raised kids knows, little ones are quick, clever, and easily distracted. These 2 little rascals made their way to the sporting goods section, where they found something that to them probably looked like the perfect toy, a wooden boat oar. Yes, a real, full-sized boat oar. And what did they decide to do with it? Row their shopping cart around the store, of course. They stood up in the cart, each holding one end of the oar, pretending sail across the seas of Walmart, laughing and yelling like little pirates on a grand adventure. But fun for a 5-year-old can mean trouble for the adults. During their imaginary sea voyage, the oar got scratched, chipped, and slightly cracked. When my brother-in-law finally caught up with them, he realized the oar was no longer in sellable condition. Store policy meant he had to buy the damaged item. So, reluctantly, he paid for the oar at the checkout. Now here's the interesting part. When he got home, he just tossed the oar into the garage. He didn't want it. He thought it was junk, just one more broken thing to throw away. But when I saw it lying there, I had a thought. What if this wasn't just a broken oar? What if it could be something meaningful, a reminder of the kids at this stage in life, as wild and unpredictable as they are? Maybe I could turn this into a keepsake, a piece of family memory instead of trash. So I asked him, "Hey, can I do something with that old oar?" And he shrugged and said, "Sure, whatever, I don't care." So I brought the damaged boat oar home, thinking I could make something special out of it. I've always enjoyed little DIY projects, wood burning, painting, making simple crafts. It relaxes me. And besides, I thought this could turn into a fun memory for my brother-in-law's family. Instead of tossing the oar into the trash, why not turn it into a keepsake that captured this wild, chaotic moment in their lives? The idea came to me quickly. What if each of the kids left their mark on the oar? Literally. I called my brother-in-law and asked if I could have all 9 kids trace their hands onto the wood and write their names next to the handprints. He laughed and said, "Good luck getting them to sit still that long." But he agreed. The next time they all came over, I laid the oar out in the garage, got some markers, and gathered the kids around. At first, they were curious, especially the younger ones. "What are we doing with this old thing?" they asked. I explained. This oar had already become part of their family story, so why not finish it properly? Each of them pressed a hand onto the wood, traced carefully, and signed their names. Even the 15-year-old niece, who was usually too cool for these kinds of things, smiled and joined in. When they finished, the oar was covered in little handprints and names, a messy, wonderful reminder of who they were at that moment. But I wasn't done yet. I took the oar into my workshop and carefully burned over each name and handprint with my wood-burning kit. The smell of scorched wood filled the room as I traced every line, sealing their marks into the wood forever. After that, I lightly sanded the surface and added an antique wash, giving the oar an old, weathered look, like something you'd find in a fisherman's cabin. It wasn't perfect, but it had character, just like the kids. A few days later, I brought the finished oar to my brother-in-law's house. When he saw it, his face lit up. "Man, this is amazing," he said. He called the kids in to see it, and they all crowded around, pointing out their handprints and laughing. For the first time in a while, the house felt warm and full of joy. We decided to hang the oar in the dining room, where everyone could see it. It wasn't just a broken piece of sporting equipment anymore. It was a family memory, something that told a story, something that reminded them all that even small disasters could turn into moments worth keeping. But not everyone was happy about it. As soon as my wife's mother, their grandmother, saw the oar hanging on the wall, her expression changed. Her eyes narrowed, and before I could explain, she let out a long, heavy sigh. I didn't realize it yet, but my little project was about to cause a whole new problem. As soon as the oar found its new home on the dining room wall, trouble began to brew. My wife's mother, the kids' grandmother, didn't hold back her feelings. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, staring at the oar like it was some kind of insult. After a long silence, she finally said, "Why is that broken thing hanging in here? You're rewarding them for bad behavior." Her voice was sharp, cutting through the room. The laughter of the kids faded. You could feel the tension grow as her words sank in. She wasn't done. She went on to scold my brother-in-law right there, in front of everyone. "You're letting them get away with everything. These kids are out of control, wild. And now you hang up this trophy to celebrate what they did. They damaged property. You should have thrown that oar in the trash to teach them a lesson." I stood there, stunned. I hadn't meant to cause a scene. My only intention was to save something from the trash and turn it into a memory, something warm and personal. But to her, this was a symbol of failure in parenting, a reward for recklessness. Then she turned on the oldest granddaughter, the 15-year-old, and said, "And where were you when your brothers were running wild in that store? You were supposed to be watching them." The girl's face turned red, her eyes on the floor. You could tell she felt ashamed, even though she didn't deserve the blame. She had been with her 5-year-old sister in another aisle, looking at hair accessories, completely unaware of her brother's mini adventure in the sporting goods section. At that moment, my brother-in-law stepped in. Calm but firm, he said, "Mom, that's enough. It's not her fault. I'm the parent here. I was there. This is on me, not her. And if you're going to keep blaming and questioning how I raise these kids, then maybe you need to think about finding another place to live." The room went dead quiet. Nobody moved. The kids froze, eyes wide. Even the grandmother was speechless for a moment. It was clear. This silly old oar had opened up something much deeper in the family. It wasn't just about a broken piece of wood. It was about discipline, responsibility, and control. Things this family had been struggling with ever since the kid's mother had been away. I felt terrible. My simple little project, meant to save a broken oar from the trash, had sparked a full-blown family conflict. And standing there in that uncomfortable silence, I wondered, had I made everything worse instead of better? But part of me also thought, maybe this conversation needed to happen. Maybe the cracks in the family, the ones they were trying to ignore, had to come into the open. All because of a damaged Walmart oar. Funny how something so small can stir up so much. The house remained quiet for the rest of the evening. No one dared to bring up the oar again. Dinner was unusually tense, forks clinking on plates, soft whispers between the kids, and a heavy feeling hanging in the air. The oar, now hanging in its proud spot on the dining room wall, seemed to silently watch over us all like an unwanted guest. After dinner, my brother-in-law pulled me aside into the garage. His face was serious but calm. "Listen," he said, "I appreciate what you did. I really do. The kids loved it. I loved it. But you've seen how my mum reacted, and I can't blame you if you're regretting this whole thing." I shook my head. "I don't regret it. I was just trying to do something good. I thought it could remind everyone that this is family, not failure. But I didn't expect this kind of fallout." He sighed, leaning against the workbench. It's not your fault. Honestly, maybe this was coming anyway. My mom's been on edge for months. Ever since their mother's been gone, she's been stepping in where she doesn't need to. She's trying to control everything. I think this ore just gave her an excuse to explode. I could see the frustration in his eyes, years of worry and exhaustion. Raising 9 kids alone while his wife was away couldn't have been easy. And now, with his own mother questioning his every decision, the weight on his shoulders must have been unbearable. Maybe you gave me more than an oar, he said softly. Maybe you gave me a reason to finally stand up to her. I hadn't thought of it that way. But maybe he was right. Maybe this silly wooden oar, this broken piece of sporting goods, was the spark that finally lit a fire under him to reclaim control over his home and his kids. The next day, I got a text from him. Hung the oar back up. Kids smiled when they saw it this morning. Mom left earlier to stay with my sister for a few days. Might be the break we all needed. I smiled at the message. Maybe things would settle down after all. Later that week, I stopped by their house again. The atmosphere was completely different. The kids were running around, laughing, and even the teenage niece seemed more relaxed. My brother-in-law looked lighter somehow, as if the air had cleared. The oar still hung in the dining room, proudly displayed. Not as a symbol of chaos or bad parenting, but as a reminder that this family had weathered something difficult and come out stronger. I realized then that the oar had become more than a craft project. It had become a turning point for this family, a marker of change. What started as an accident in a Walmart aisle had ended up forcing important truths to the surface, truths that had been buried under stress, fear, and exhaustion. Funny how life works like that sometimes. You try to save a broken object and end up saving something much bigger. In the days that followed, something unexpected happened. My brother-in-law texted me again, this time with a photo. It was the oar, still hanging in the dining room, but now surrounded by other little handmade decorations the kids had created. Painted frames, silly drawings, even a small wooden sign that read, "Our Family Story." He wrote, "They all wanted to make more stuff like the oar. The boys helped make this sign. The girls painted these frames. The house finally feels like ours again." I smiled as I stared at the photo. The tension that had hung so heavy in their home just days earlier seemed to have lifted. What was once the cause of a family argument had become the heart of a new family tradition. When I visited them the next weekend, the change was undeniable. The kids showed off their new crafts proudly, telling me about what they made and why. Even the teenage niece seemed lighter, chatting with her little brothers and not avoiding the room like before. And my brother-in-law, he looked relieved, happy even. He confided in me that since his mom had left for a few days to cool off, he felt more in control of the house. He said the kids listened better, helped each other more, and even cleaned up after themselves without being asked. It was strange to think that a broken boat oar from Walmart had started this ripple effect, but it had. A small accident turned into a lasting impact. What I thought was just a way to save something from the trash had actually saved a little bit of this family's spirit. Of course, his mom did eventually return, but things weren't the same. She no longer commented on the oar. In fact, she didn't say much about the decorations at all. Maybe she realized something had shifted, something she couldn't control, and maybe that was okay. As I stood in that dining room, surrounded by handmade crafts and the noisy joy of 9 kids, I realized this was what mattered. Not the mistakes, not the bad moments, but how we choose to turn those moments into something better. And you know what? I think we all have a broken oar in our lives, something that seems useless, something that feels like a mistake. But maybe, just maybe, those things are the start of something bigger, something beautiful, if we give them a second chance. So let me ask you this, friends. What's your broken oar? What's something you could turn into a new beginning instead of throwing it away? But hey, don't keep that answer in your head. Share it with me in the comments. Have you ever turned a little mistake or accident into something positive? I'd love to hear your story. And if you enjoyed this real-life family moment, hit that like button, subscribe for more true, heartfelt stories, and don't forget to share this video with someone who might need a reminder that small things can make a big difference. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care of your little broken oars. You never know where they might lead.